Thank you for joining me for another video. Last week I said that I was going to get into shechita today. Shechita is the kosher slaughter procedure, I think is probably the best way to say that, a procedure as opposed to a process, although it is a very labor-intensive process. If you've never slaughtered an animal, kosher or otherwise, you need to be aware that there is a lot that goes into it. It's very labor intensive. It's always better to have other people, but got thinking about it and I realized that I can't really get into how to slaughter kosherly, if that's a word. How to, perform shechita, how to do a kosher slaughter. I can't really get into that before I explain the rules of Kashruth. What makes an animal kosher? What animals are permitted, what animals are not permitted. Are there other forbidden mixtures of foods or forbidden parts of animals? Things like that. Okay. Now, that being said, I'm going to this week discuss basic kosher laws. Okay, we're not going to get too heavy and too deep because there are literal chapters and books filled with kosher laws that we've been paying attention to for, I don't know, the last 2,000 years or so, approximately. That's from the time they've been written down. Okay. We've had those rules, obviously, we've had those rules since before, Well, I guess technically the Torah, being like, let's say around 3,000, 3,100-ish years old, I suppose that counts as well. But in the Torah, there's really just a small portion of a chapter that actually deals with these things. So, just take a deep breath, just relax. We're not going to talk about killing Bambi today, okay? Much. No, we're not going to talk about slaughter today. We're just going to talk about what is and is not permitted for Jews according to the Torah. What is and is not permitted for Jews to eat, right? So somebody asked me, and this, by the way, the whole food thing happens to be one of the most common questions I get asked. Oh, but what do you mean you can't have bacon? That's actually probably number one. What do you mean there's no bacon? Well, of course there's no bacon. Listen, man, I have to choose between God and bacon. I'm going with the living God versus a dead pig every time. I'm sorry. That's just, you have bacon, knock yourself out, wonderful. I'll have my, my beef bacon, which is a thing, by the way, and it's not bad. It's very salty, but it's not bad. I can't say that I enjoy it, but I can't say that I would eat it all the time. But it certainly smells similar to pork bacon. Anyway, I'm off topic already, and I haven't even started yet. So that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into the kosher laws. I'm not going to read anything from the Torah today. I'm going to leave that up to you. However, if you would like to know where the kosher laws are in Scripture, okay, so look in Leviticus chapter 11 and Deuteronomy chapter 14. You're going to find that in terms of land animals, it gives you the qualifications for land animals that we're allowed to eat. In terms of fish, anything from the sea, it gives you the qualifications for anything from the sea. And as far as birds, we have a list of what is prohibited as opposed to, a list of qualifications for birds, because, let's be honest here. Let's just, be honest about this. There are an awful lot of birds out there, and it's really hard to fit them into any categories, okay? Now, let's go in this order, okay? So the land animals, okay? And by land animals, I'm not counting birds. Birds are a different class completely. So you got land animals, that would be animals that walk on the earth. You got, birds would be Wafat Hashemayim, the birds of the skies, okay, as opposed to land animals, as opposed to fish, which would come from the sea, right? So, as far as land animals are concerned, the Torah gives us two signs to look for on them, and they have to have both signs or the animal is just not a clean animal. Okay, so your signs that you're looking for are going to be, it has to have a hoof that's split all the way through, and it has to have, so it can't have hand feet like we do. So no chimpanzees. I don't know who's into chimpanzees, but no chimpanzees. And the second sign that it has to have is it has to be, so the Torah words it like this: it has to chew the cud. Okay. Aeroplanes overhead. As I say, oh yeah, so it's going to have a split hoof and it has to chew the cud. Now, chewing the cud, for those of you who are not familiar, those of you who didn't grow up in farm country, chewing the cud is, you ever see a cow and how they basically always look like they're chewing? It's because they basically always are chewing. Cows and other animals like them, called ruminants, have multiple stomachs or multiple stomach chambers. This is gross, okay? I'm just getting a little forewarning there. This is gross. They chew their food, it goes down their first stomach, they regurgitate. Why did I go there? Split hoof. Bison, for those of you who live in, also happen to be cleaner animals. They also happen to be kosher animals, meaning they also have, every single one of these animals has multiple stomachs. However, some animals that have only one sign will lack the other one. So, for example, a pig has a hoof, and its hoof is all the way split. And the Torah makes a point to specifically say the swine. This is the Torah's wording, okay? The swine. It's obviously this is not Hebrew. This is the English. The swine, even though it has a hoof, and even though the hoof it's split all the way through, it doesn't chew the cud. Okay, the exact word that it uses is it's an abomination to you. I don't know, if the Hebrew term has the same connotation as the English term abomination. Okay, the Hebrew is toreva. So toreva, I think it just really comes across more along the lines of it's sinful to you. Whereas in English, if you say something's an abomination, we're talking like this is a crime against God and humanity and all the laws of nature and any other multiple dimensions and gods and goddesses that may exist in those, okay? An abomination is like the worst thing in English. In Hebrew, it's just like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't do that. It's sinful. I don't know if it held the same weight back then, but I don't know. So pigs, not allowed. Camels, not allowed. Camels actually don't even have hooves. That's the issue with them. They don't have hooves. They're always chewing the cud, right? They've got multiple stomach chambers, but they don't have hooves. No, they've got toes. Some of you already see where my mind went, and I feel so bad for you. They are two-toed ungulates, okay? That's what their scientific classification is, and we're just going to leave it at that, all right? So they got two toes on the front of their foot. It is a foot. It's a proper foot. It's a paw. Dogs, not allowed to eat dog. I don't know why you would. I mean, I'm told, though, that in China, dog is actually considered a delicacy. We're not going to get into how I feel about that because I don't feel very good about that. So we'll just keep on moving, right? So, what did we learn here today? Well, a fish in the water. It has to have two sides. It has to have first a split hoof, a hoof that's all the way split, and it has to have it has to chew the cud. Okay, multiple stomach chambers is generally what that means. The Torah airplane. And it must be time for all of them to come in. What time is it? It's 9 o'clock here. It must be time for everybody to come in. That's wonderful. So the Torah specifically names the hare as being an animal that chews the cud. Okay, you don't want to know what that means, and I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to let you look that up. But let me put it to you like this: hares only have one stomach. There's only one way to, well, I guess there are technically two ways, but they go the way that's more disgusting. There's only one truly disgusting way to get that pre-digested nummy goodness back into your mouth in pellet form, and that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to leave it there. Moving right along to, let's talk about, actually before we move on from land animals, you may notice there are two major classes of animals that are left out by those rules. Really, only mammals are permitted to be eaten in terms of land animals. Yes. Okay, now that disqualifies amphibians and reptiles. Okay, so alligators not kosher, right? Frogs not kosher. So many Cajuns and rednecks. It's just, I mean, that's, what can I say? I mean, it's not, I don't make the rules, I just live by them, because who wants to eat a mud chicken, you know? By the way, I'm told that's what alligator tail tastes like. Some people do eat alligators. They're probably not Jewish, most of them. Maybe a few Jews that are like, I wonder what that tastes like. Because I have been wondering what it tasted like for a while. And I asked a non-Jew, who's had alligator, and says that he enjoys it. I was like, it looks like it would taste like a muddy chicken. What does it taste like? And he goes, well, it's really like a muddy chicken. So there you have it. If you were ever curious, I also theorized that it would probably be greasy. He said not really, but he had alligator jerky, so, that doesn't sound appealing to me at all, the jerky thing. It's one of those things that, like, I might be willing to, pop it into my mouth just to taste it and spit it right back out just to see how it is, but I'm not doing that with jerky, that kind of a thing. Because, like, why? You're not actually even going to taste anything. Frog legs, so I grew up in the Dallas area of Texas. I grew up a little bit east of Dallas, right? One of my buddies from down the street actually invited me to go frog gigging with him one time, and I didn't, but he was getting frogs to harvest for their frog legs, right? And it just, like, the whole thing, it just seems weird, okay? That one I imagine being a slimy chicken. So, because everything tastes like chicken, right? Except, ironically enough, imitation chicken. I mean, you could literally pull from anything and it'll taste like chicken, except for the imitation chicken. It makes no sense. It staggers the imagination, right? So, moving right along, we're going to go to aquatic animals. So when it says fish in the Torah, it means something from the water, right? Something that primarily lives in the water. So we're talking, fish, eels, sharks, whales, squid. In no world do I see penguins fitting into aquatic animals, but I also don't really see them fitting into birds either, but I think that they are considered birds. Penguins, man, like, who knew? The one weird animal, it's not the only weird animal. Platypus, duck-billed platypus, not kosher, right? Why? Well, because, I mean, have you seen it, really? Like, look at it. Everything about it is wrong. Everything about it is weird. And God's like, ha-ha, this'll trick them. Well, it's not fooling anybody, God, but, at the same time, good one. It's a good sense of humor. Aquatic animals, anything, the Torah tells us, that comes out of the water, If it's going to be clean for consumption, right, it's got to have both scales that can be removed by hand and fins, okay? Now you may be thinking to yourself, but wait a second. What if it's only got one of those? Well, let me tell you, it's not kosher. It has to have both, okay? And just kind of an interesting thought, if you are not sure what species of fish you have, but it's clearly a fish, right? You don't know if it had fins or not. If you still have the skin, and you see the skin has scales on it, well, the obvious answer is that it's a kosher type of fish, because you will never have a case where a fish has scales but no fins. You will have cases where it has fins but no scales, you know, eels, catfish, you know, that sort of thing, right? But you'll never find a case where it has scales but no fins. I think that's just kind of a cool thing. You know, so when it comes to fish, right, it's pretty easy to figure out which ones are kosher, which ones aren't, even if you don't know what species of fish it is, right? Now, when it comes to birds, okay, this is where it gets really fun. We just have like general prototypical, not prototypical, archetypical, that's the word, that's the right word, archetypical types of birds that we're specifically prohibited from eating. So the Torah says you're not allowed to have an ostrich. You're not allowed to eat an ostrich. I don't know why you would, but like, I mean, to be fair, it's a lot of meat, right? I mean, it's ostrich. It's a big, that's a really big chicken. It's going to make a wonderful dinner for Shabbat, right? Well, you can't have it for Shabbat. You can't have it. If you're Jewish, you can't have it, period, unless you're like starving to death, and you know the only thing around forever is this ostrich. But not only is it limited to just the one species of ostrich, there are actually like 2 or 3 ostrich species in the world. But not only is it limited to, or not only is it not limited to just that one species, or even the whole, you know, subspecies thing, but it includes other birds that look just like it, you know, that look similar, right? So the emus in Australia who survived the Great Emu War of the 1930s, that one never gets old. That's, if you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up, you know, Google that, right? It's quite possibly the funniest action that I've ever seen any government take, ever. Because it's just like, why would you go after that? I mean, I understand why. I understand it. I just don't understand it, you know? It's, you know, I mean, come on. We're here first. By like millions of years. Let them have it. It's their land. Okay, you think the Aboriginals were the first humans here, or the first people, not people, living things here? That's what I'm trying to, creatures. You think the Aboriginal peoples were the first living creatures there? No, 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 the emus. Every Aboriginal Australian is going to have a problem with what I just said, so sorry in advance. Please don't send me strongly worded emails. I won't read them. I might read them, and I might respond by saying, yeah, sorry, that's my bad. I'm a messed up sense of humor sometimes, but that's all right because I know it, and so I can just sort of compensate, right? Moving right along, the general rule when it comes to birds, right, is if it is a part of a similar species to the one that's named in the Torah, it's not permitted. If it is not prohibited specifically or by implication by the Torah, it is permitted. Let me say that again. If it is not specifically or by implication because an emu is not an ostrich, but by golly, it looks just like them. They could be cousins. They're both radites. In case you were curious, radites. That's the I think it's the genus name. That entire any bird that's a radite, it's not kosher. So that's ostriches, kiwis, emus, cassowaries, moths. I don't even know if moths are still around anymore. I think they're extinct. They're not that I would know. I mean, dogs are extinct, but I mean, I never saw one, right? But what was I even going with that? Oh yeah, so by prohibiting the ostrich, the Torah also prohibits the emu. Now, if it's not specified, either by general type and appearance or by name in the Torah, if it's not specified that it is prohibited, it's permitted. Okay, that's the general rule. Because if God didn't want you to eat it, He'd have said something about it. Okay, that's just. A lot of people don't seem to understand that. There's actually a debate as to whether or not the turkey is kosher. And the only reason there's a debate about it is because there's a question, because the turkey, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is a North American bird. Okay, it is indigenous to North America. There are like 5 different subspecies of it all across the North America, right? And I think even, I want to say even into Central America as well, but don't quote me on that. So there was no possible way that they could have known, the Israelites could have known, as they were, there at Mount Sinai, that the turkey existed, and so God didn't mention it by name. So we have to ask the question: is it kosher or is it not? It's kosher. Listen, if it's not complicated. If God didn't say don't, then it's permission by omission. Okay, that's just. And I hate to say it like that because that's not always the case, but here it is. It's not even hard to figure out, right? So, what birds are kosher? So, like turkey, ducks, chickens, peacocks, though if you wanted to kill a peacock, that should feel like a sin to you because, I mean, they're just so pretty. I mean, come on, like, what's wrong with you? Why, you got all the perfectly good birds that you could kill. Why go for the prettiest one? Come on, man. Use your brain. I bet they're delicious, though. They probably taste like chicken. But, so those are all going to be kosher species of birds. Penguin is not, that I'm aware of, prohibited. But, again, I'm not sure about its halachic status. I don't know if anyone's ever actually slaughtered a penguin to eat it, and frankly the whole thing is really just kind of weird to me, so I don't wonder what a penguin tastes like. I imagine it's very fatty. I don't know though, I bet somebody out there has tried it. If that's you, please let me know how they taste. I'm just curious, genuinely. So when it comes to birds, if the Torah doesn't prohibit it, it permits it. Okay, when it comes to land mammals, go back to that, right? So animals like, deer, cows, bison, yaks, giraffe, okay, all kosher. Good luck slaughtering, yaks and giraffes, though. And bison, for that matter. Those guys can be mean. Animals that are not kosher would be things like pigs, hippos. Why would anybody try to kill a hippo? Anyway, pigs, hippos, kangaroos, marmosets, mice, wallabies. Basically 99% of the animals in Australia. No, that's an exaggeration. It's closer to 98%. No, it is up there though. A lot of. So Australia's got very specialized wildlife, koalas, which are not kosher, platypuses, plural of platypus. Somebody please help me out. animals like that, wallabies, freaking dingoes, right? It's got a very specialized wildlife system there that you're not going to find anywhere else, right? So there are a lot of marsupials in Australia. There's exactly one species of marsupial in North America, okay? And it's the opossum, the Virginia opossum. Why was it named after the state of Virginia? I will never know. But it's not kosher either. So there happen to be a lot of animals that are indigenous to Australia that are not kosher. And that's fine. There are also a lot of animals that are indigenous to Australia that are kosher. Most of them are fish, though. We're not going to talk about that, right? So in terms of fish, like bass, tuna, grouper, perch, tigerfish if you live in Africa, animals like that, they're kosher. Shellfish, octopus, squid, whales, sharks, whatever else lives in the bottoms of the ocean, that's whatever whatever that fish with, like, it's just when it comes up to our sea level, it's it just looks like a horribly disfigured man. It's like the ugliest fish on the planet, right? You know what I'm talking about. I don't know the name of it, but that one, none of those are kosher, okay? Now, is there anything else in terms of what is and is not allowed, before we get into talking about slaughtering? Well, yes. So we have two mixtures of foods that we're not allowed to eat, okay? So the first thing is, I have forgotten that dairy and eggs are totally permissible, provided that the dairy and the eggs come from kosher animals, okay? So you can have cow's milk, sheep's milk, goat's milk, yak's milk if you so desire, giraffe's milk if you can get it. Good luck. But camel's milk is out. I really can't think of any other. Pig's milk is out. That sort of thing. So dairy from non-kosher species is not kosher. Eggs from kosher species are kosher. Eggs from non-kosher species are not kosher. Okay, that's just kind of a pretty simple, basic logic there. Honey, totally permissible. Okay, you don't have to be a vegan to be an observant Jew. And by the way, if you're not Jewish, technically this doesn't apply to you. I would still recommend that you, eat, beef, chicken. I would recommend that you eat clean animals, but there's technically no sin in you eating pig or kangaroo, hippopotamus or ostrich. Hippopotamus, that's a funny one, man. Its name, it literally means water horse. Like, who looked at a hippo and said to themselves, you know what that looks like? That looks like a water horse, man. Like, who, for real? Come on. Ranks right up there with seahorse. Come on. It's not a horse at all. But I can get, seahorse. I mean, it's got the face like, kind of, never mind. Forbidden mixtures of foods, okay? So, rabbinically speaking, we're not allowed to mix meat with fish, okay? And the reason for that, and it's a rabbinical prohibition, the reason for that is, it means you're not going to find it in the Bible. You will, however, find it in the writings of the rabbis, okay? You're going to find that Sanhedrin ruled it. And the reason that we don't do that is because there's actually a very reasonable reason behind it. Reasonable reasons. If you've got meat, or what you think is meat, that you had on the same plate as fish. Okay, fish is often bony. Okay, sometimes you gotta eat around the bones of a fish. Okay, so what if you had fish and steak, right? A little bit of surf and turf. You've got them on the same plate. Finish up with the fish. You go to eat your steak, and you swallow a fish bone. That's not always going to happen, but it's possible. You swallow a fish bone. If it doesn't kill you, it's going to be very uncomfortable. There is still, however, that possibility that you could actually choke on it. But we're not going to talk about that possibility. And so that's why the rabbis prohibited it, because it's a safety issue, and that makes sense. Okay, that's logical. Instead of saying, "Hey, no, you shouldn't even have them on the same plate." Okay, you could eat them in the same meal. Fish first on a separate plate, then meat. But you can't, have them on the same plate with each other, because that is an issue of safety. Okay. Now the other one, however, is a biblical prohibition. You are going to find this in the Bible, that we don't mix meat and dairy together. Okay. And there's a reason for that. You can't jump from the ground. You have to jump from a tree. Or something like that. Then there's going to be the guy who's like, no, only if it's a silver gilded tree, so that you got to beautify the mitzvah. Now, listen, there are people like this, okay? It sounds stupid, right? And it is, but, there are people like that, okay? Yes, we don't mix meat and dairy. We don't actually know the real reason for it, but one of the best explanations that I've heard is that meat comes from a dead animal, right? Everybody paid attention to Genesis 9, part 1, right? You're not allowed to eat a living animal. Not allowed to eat the limb of an animal while it's still alive, right? So you can't eat meat unless the animal is dead, so meat represents death. Well, then you've got dairy, comes from milk, right? Milk is meant to sustain life, so milk represents life, dairy represents life by extension. So you're not allowed to mix life and death with each other. That's just bad form, right? That honestly is the best explanation that I've heard for it. Beyond, it's a cultural taboo that we don't really know why it's there. Okay, both are true. You shouldn't mix life and death, and it is a cultural taboo that we're not really sure why it's there. Okay, that being said, I'm done this week. So next week we're going to get into the proper slaughter procedure for a kosher slaughter. I'm going to show you my knife, so that you can see what a slaughtering knife looks like. And that's all I got for today. So, yeah. Until next time, shalom.